"We're using your mother-in-law's savings for this trip," Carol announced, her tone oddly casual. "It'll eventually become Tyler's inheritance anyway, so it's fine, right?" She added, as if to justify their actions. My brother and his wife had rushed over immediately after my mother passed away. Not to offer condolences, but to seize her bank book and withdraw her savings before I could even submit her death certificate to the government office. "You used Mom's money, huh?" I managed to ask, trying to suppress my anger. Carol's response was shockingly nonchalant. "Yeah, we spent about $10,000 on the trip." Oh well, the audacity of my brother and his wife conspiring to use my mother's money without permission made me furious for a moment. But then I remembered something these people didn't know. I couldn't help but laugh, I said, barely holding back my laughter. Carol looked puzzled by my sudden outburst. "What's wrong with you?" "Did the shock of us using the money make you go crazy?" Of course, I wasn't going crazy. I just couldn't help but laugh when I'd imagined the surprised faces of my brother and his wife when they found out the truth and faced their miserable fate. Their carefree days were probably numbered. I and Samantha, a very ordinary office worker raised by kind parents. My parents were always good-natured, constantly thinking about what they could do for others. Their kindness sometimes led them to being deceived or burdened with unfair responsibilities, but I admired them nonetheless. However, my brother Tyler had a completely different personality. He was always calculating what was beneficial for him and acted accordingly. To him, our parents, who would go out of their way to help others, were incomprehensible. As Tyler grew up, his rebellion against our parents intensified. In high school, he began to demand more money from them, saying, "If you can afford to do something for others, you can give me more allowance." Despite accepting Tyler's personality, our parents never changed their beliefs. Their unwavering character only frustrated him more. Tyler's negative feelings towards our parents only grew stronger in college. Taking advantage of the fact that our parents paid for his tuition, Tyler spent his college days partying and eventually failed in a year, causing them trouble. Parents should naturally devote themselves to their children, right? Or can you only be kind to others, but not your own family? Tyler would argue, justifying his selfish behavior. After graduating college, Tyler moved out and started living on his own. Although he left home without notice, he complained that living a decent life on his first paycheck seemed impossible for him. He kept returning to our parents' house for living expenses before heading back to his own place. Concerned about him, our parents kept giving him money whenever he asked. When I finally got a job, I decided to support our parents financially in place of Tyler. "Samantha, it's your hard-earned money, so you can use it however you like," my parents said. Despite their words, I continued to give them money, treating it as their grocery expenses. This routine continued for several years. Tyler, who only showed up to ask for money, unexpectedly invited me and our parents to a restaurant to talk. When we arrived, a beautiful woman was sitting next to Tyler. "Dad, Mom, Samantha, let me introduce you." "This is my girlfriend, Carol," Tyler said, and Carol nodded politely. "I've decided to marry Carol. We'll be busy preparing for our wedding and our new life together, but I hope you'll support us," Tyler said. I initially thought Tyler meant support in terms of caring for Carol, but it became clear that his idea of support was entirely different. He asked our parents to cover the expenses for his wedding and their new home. Knowing our parents' inability to refuse help, Tyler skillfully persuaded them to foot the bill for everything. Even after the wedding and the purchase of their new home, he continued to rely on them for money. Carol, his wife, grew accustomed to this lifestyle and began living more extravagantly. However, this lavish lifestyle was short-lived. Our father's health deteriorated, and he was hospitalized. Even with insurance, hospital stays are expensive. To ensure our retired parents wouldn't struggle financially, Tyler had to reconsider his reliance on them. I proposed to my brother that we both shoulder the burden of the hospital bills. You've been living at home and receiving assistance from Mom and Dad, and you've had a fair share of financial support from them too, right? This is the time for us to step up and help them. I reasoned, but my brother didn't see it that way. Why should I? He retorted. It's Dad's fault for not taking care of his health. He neglected himself while always helping others. That's his responsibility. Following that conversation, my brother stopped visiting our parents' house altogether. Neither he nor Carol, his wife, made a single visit to our father while he was in the hospital. It was my mother and I who desperately took care of him until he passed away. Even when we informed them of our father's death, they didn't offer any assistance with the funeral arrangements. They briefly showed up at the funeral, but failed to greet our relatives properly before leaving. Our relatives looked at them with disdain, but they seemed indifferent. My mother, who had bravely taken on the role of chief mourner during the funeral, began to lose her energy after the funeral, clearly affected by the loss of my father. Tyler M. has been feeling down lately. She wants to see you. Can you visit her at home sometime? I asked my brother. After a brief pause, he responded, By the way, what happened to Dad's inheritance? It all went to Mom. It seems they had decided that's what they would do when Dad was still alive. I informed him, realizing the gravity of the situation. I felt a foreboding sense of dread and immediately cautioned my brother. Mom has control of the money now, right? He inquired. Yes, but listen carefully, I urged, sensing his intentions. Mom is emotionally vulnerable right now. Don't even think about taking advantage of her financially, okay? I need you to come and support her. That's what's important. What's the point of going if I can't get any money out of it? It's not worth my time, he retorted dismissively. Despite my insistence that we wouldn't be providing him with any financial assistance, my brother never set foot in our parents' house again. Then, just 6 months after our father's passing, our mother also succumbed. Despite her weakened state, my brother showed no concern upon learning of her death. He hurried back to our parents' house. I hoped he would fulfill his duties as the eldest son during the funeral, but to my dismay, he and his wife vanished as soon as it began. Frantically, I tried calling his cell phone, but it went straight to voicemail. In the end, I assumed the role of chief mourner in his absence, managing to navigate through the funeral proceedings alone. Several days later, I finally managed to get in touch with my brother. Samantha, this is Carol, came the voice on the other end. Where's Tyler? I asked anxiously. He's busy with boarding procedures and can't come to the phone, Carol replied casually. Boarding procedures? Where are you? We're at JFK Airport. We're leaving the United States in a few hours, Carol said. My heart sank as I processed the revelation. You're leaving the United States and going abroad. Yes, we're going on an international trip, Carol confirmed, devoid of any hint of remorse or regret. I was taken aback by my brother and his wife's swift decision to embark on an overseas trip immediately after our mother's passing. However, what Carol uttered next left me utterly astounded. We're really grateful to our mother-in-law, you know. Thanks to her, we're able to enjoy this luxurious trip abroad, Carol remarked, her tone laced with casualness. Puzzled, I questioned, What do you mean by that? We used our mother-in-law's savings for this trip. After all, it was going to be Tyler's inheritance anyway, so why not use Mom's savings? Carol explained nonchalantly. How did you manage to get that money? I inquired, my anger simmering beneath the surface. We borrowed her bankbook and seal when we visited her house. We knew we wouldn't be able to withdraw money once the death certificate was submitted, So we hurried. Carol confessed, revealing the true reason behind their rush to her mom's house after her demise. So you used Mom's money, I stated, trying to contain my frustration. Carol's response was surprisingly blaze. Yes, we've already spent $10,000 on trip expenses. It's a good thing Tyler's plan worked out. Initially, I was furious at the audacity of my brother and his wife for dipping into our mom's savings without permission. But then a realization struck me. They didn't know. I couldn't help but chuckle inwardly. Serves you right, I thought to myself. Perplexed by my sudden outburst of laughter, Carol questioned, "What's wrong with you? Did the shock of us using the money make you lose your mind? Tyler is the eldest son, so it's natural for him to inherit more, right?" I responded between laughs. "Sure, that's fine. I'll give up my inheritance so Tyler can inherit everything. That was your plan all along, wasn't it?" Upon hearing this, Carol's demeanor shifted to one of delight. "Oh my, you're quite understanding, huh? By the way, please make sure to arrange for all of Mama's mail to be sent to your house from now on. Don't worry, it's a simple task. I'll let Tyler know," she concluded cheerfully before hanging up the phone. I didn't hear from my brother again until they returned from their trip. "Samantha, Carol told me you're giving up your inheritance," my brother stated as soon as he called. "Yes, but more importantly, did you handle the mail forwarding from Mom's mail?" I asked. "Yeah, I took care of it as soon as we got back," he replied. "But you know you're not going to change your mind later, are you? You won't say you should have inherited after all?" I inquired. "Of course not. I still believe my decision was the right one," he affirmed confidently. "Well, it's only right that I, the eldest son, inherit everything," he added with a chuckle before ending the call. However, a few weeks later, he called again, sounding panicked. "There's a collection notice addressed to Mom in her mail." "What's this about?" he asked anxiously. "Oh, is it from the bank?" I speculated our parents always wanted to help people in need and would accept any requests, including financial ones. As we delved into the matter, it became apparent that our parents had accumulated substantial debt, outweighing their savings, making inheritance a risky proposition that could potentially leave them in a dire financial situation. "Did you know about this?" my brother accused, his voice rising. "You knew Mom had debt, right? Why didn't you say anything?" There was no point. "What you're saying is meaningless," I retorted. "If I had known, I would have given up the inheritance too." "That's impossible," he exclaimed. "Why the hell is it impossible, Tyler? You took money from Mom's bank account to go on vacation, didn't you?" I countered. "So what? What does that have to do with giving up the inheritance?" He shot back. "It's a big deal. What you did is considered a tacit acceptance of the inheritance," I explained. "It's a legal concept. Let me break it down for you so you can understand." I explained to my brother that by withdrawing money from our deceased family member's account for his own use before the inheritance process, it was legally seen as a tacit acceptance of the inheritance. "I have never heard of such a thing," he rebutted. "Of course not," I replied. "Not many people would even consider using a deceased family member's savings for their own selfish desires, so it doesn't come up in conversation. You're just making stuff up because you want the inheritance for yourself. I have a lawyer friend, you know. They'll find out if you're lying," my brother threatened before abruptly ending the call. Later he called back, but this time his bravado was replaced by a sense of resignation. "Samantha, you were right. I can't give up the inheritance now," he admitted. It seemed his lawyer friend had given him the same answer I did. Finally understanding the gravity of the situation, my brother realized that he had inherited not just assets, but also the debt our parents had accrued. Despite his protests, It became clear that he was partially responsible for the financial mess, having frequently begged our parents for money without knowing the extent of their debt. Desperate to find a way out of his predicament, my brother attempted to persuade me. "Hey, Samantha, our parents are gone, and it's just us siblings now. Isn't this the time to join forces?" He proposed. "What do you mean by join forces?" I questioned, wary of his intentions. "I think we should work together to pay back our parents' debt. Now's the time to show our filial piety," my brother proposed, his tone almost pleading. I sighed heavily at his selfish suggestion, which felt like too little too late. "What are you talking about?" "When Dad was in the hospital, I suggested we should help our parents together, but you pushed me away," I reminded him. "I was busy at the time," he defended himself. "Regardless of how busy you were, you didn't visit Dad in the hospital even once, and you didn't support our grieving mother afterward. I don't want to hear the words filial piety from someone like you ever again," I retorted, feeling a surge of frustration. With nothing left to say, I left my brother hanging. "Have you ever done anything for someone else, Tyler? I know you took advantage of our kind parents, but there's no one who will help someone who can't do anything for others, even if they're family. But if you don't help me, Carol and I can't pay back the debt by ourselves. Are you going to abandon your brother? We're family," he pleaded desperately. "When Dad was in the hospital, you abandoned him, saying it was his own fault for not managing his health. This time, using Mom's savings is your own fault," I countered, feeling the weight of disappointment settling between us. "I regret that, okay? I've changed," my brother's voice pleaded through the phone. "Have you? I still think you're just desperate to reduce your own debt. And even if you changed, the person you should apologize to is no longer in this world." "It's too late," I interjected firmly, cutting him off before hanging up the phone. I had no intention of helping him after all the trouble he had caused our parents throughout the years. Burdened with debt and unable to live the carefree life they once had, Tyler and Carol's relationship quickly turned sour. However, living separately would only incur more expenses. Unable to afford even the moving expenses, they had no choice but to continue their married life together, bickering all the while. At first, they tried to save money and pay off the debt little by little from their salaries, but it didn't last long. Neither Tyler nor Carol could forget their luxurious lifestyle, and they would secretly spend money behind each other's backs, causing their debt to never decrease. As a result, they blamed each other for their inability to reduce the debt further, damaging their relationship. Their marriage continued to crumble in this vicious cycle. On the other hand, I finally found the time to properly mourn our parents. I remembered how, during our parents' funeral, countless attendees tearfully expressed their gratitude for the help our parents had provided them when they were in need. Realizing how many people our parents had helped made me feel even more proud of them. It was ironic that my brother, who had never shown any gratitude and had always caused trouble for our parents, ended up shouldering the debt that resulted from their acts of kindness. Even though they were drowning in debt, I still admired our parents for never giving up on helping others. With these thoughts in mind, I continued to pay my respects to our parents at the family altar every day.
Hi, I'm Lena. Today, I want to share my story. A story about family, power, and finding my voice. A woman's place is not in business meetings, my father-in-law, Frank, declared at yet another tense family dinner. Ben needs a wife who focuses on family, not spreadsheets. I felt my husband tense beside me but say nothing. 6 months into our marriage, and I was already learning that Frank's word was law in this family. Actually, I said with a polite smile, the project I'm managing just landed $1 million client. Frank's face hardened. Numbers are a man's domain, right, Ben? Ben stared at his plate, avoiding my eyes. Dad has years of experience, Lena. I met Ben at a finance conference 2 years ago. He had been so different then, confident, full of ideas. But that was before Frank began inserting himself into every aspect of our lives. My best friend Amy warned me about this. I thought bitterly. His father runs that family like a dictatorship, she'd said. And she was right. Every Sunday dinner felt like a trial, with Frank presiding as judge and jury. Even at our housewarming, Frank had something to criticize. "The house you bought is too small," he declared. "No room for grandchildren." "We're focusing on our careers first," I replied. Frank slammed his hand on the table. "Family comes first. Always. Ben knows this, don't you, son?" "Yes, Dad," Ben mumbled. Frank even dismissed Ben's career. "Banking isn't real business," he'd say. "Real men build things like my construction company. When are you joining the family business, son?" Ben's mother, Susan, stayed silent, refilling wine glasses with trembling hands. His sister, Jenny, only spoke when Frank addressed her directly. "They're all scared of him," Emmy observed after meeting them. "Have you noticed how they freeze when he raises his voice?" Lately, Frank's suggestions had turned into something darker. A tight grip on my shoulder if I disagreed with him. Standing too close, towering over me when making his points. Intimidation cloaked as conversation. "Just smile and nod," Susan whispered during dish duty one evening. "It's easier that way." But I wasn't raised to smile and nod. The problem was, every time I stood my ground, Frank's eyes would narrow, and his presence became more menacing. Last week, I made the mistake of mentioning my plans to expand my department at work. Frank grabbed my wrists, pretending to admire my watch. "Such expensive taste," he sneered. "Ben's salary not good enough for you." "Let go," I said firmly. His grip tightened. "Disrespectful. This generation of women thinks they know better than their elders." Ben saw it all, and, as always, said nothing. Sunday dinners became weekly nightmares. Frank's grip over the family tightened as he sensed my resistance. One morning, I found Ben in our home office, shredding a letter, a promotion offer, one that would have required us to move. "Why?" I demanded. "I don't care," he said flatly. "It would mean moving branches, and Dad says I need to stay close to home." A better position, a higher salary, all gone because Frank said no. That evening at dinner, the promotion news slipped out anyway. Frank's fork clattered against his plate. "Abandoning family for money?" he snapped. "First Lena poisons you with her career ambitions, and now this." "It's just an offer, Dad," Ben murmured, his voice shaking. "I haven't decided," Frank declared, standing abruptly. Susan flinched at his movement. "When I started this family business, my father told me." "Maybe Ben wants his own path," I interrupted, my voice calm but firm. The room fell silent. Jenny froze mid-breath, her fork hovering. Susan gripped her napkin tightly. Frank stepped behind my chair, his hands heavy on my shoulders. "You've forgotten your place again," he hissed. "My place is supporting my husband's dreams," I said, refusing to waver. His fingers dug into my shoulders painfully. "Your place is wherever I say it is. I built this family. I decide what's best." "Dad," Ben's voice was hesitant, barely audible. "Maybe ease up a bit." Frank shoved my chair forward. "She's made you weak. All her independent woman nonsense." That night, Ben slept in the guest room. Just give him time to calm down, I told myself. But Frank wasn't calming down. Every week brought new tests of control. He accidentally spilled coffee on my laptop before a client meeting. He showed up unannounced at my office, claiming to check on Ben's wife. He started suggesting, in veiled tones at dinner, that I might be cheating because of my late nights. "No smoke without fire," he'd say, looking straight at Ben. I watched my husband shrink smaller each week, retreating into his father's shadow. Then one day, I found construction documents in our mailbox. Plans for a nursery Frank had drafted without asking us. "I already paid the crew," Frank announced smugly at Sunday dinner. "They start Monday." "No," I said, my voice steady. "We're not ready for children." His face twisted into something ugly. "You don't get a vote. This is family business." I was done being quiet. "Everyone, I have an announcement," Frank began at the next Sunday dinner, puffing his chest with pride. "The family business just landed the new mall contract." The usual chorus of praise began. Susan clapped softly, Jenny nodded eagerly, and Ben beamed at his father. But something felt off. "Wasn't that project awarded to Mitchell Construction?" I asked, my voice cutting through the room. The temperature seemed to drop 20 degrees. "What did you say?" Frank's voice was deadly quiet. I saw the paperwork last week. Mitchell Construction won the bid. Are you calling me a liar? He stepped toward me, his face darkening. I'm saying you're wrong. I replied evenly. The mall project went to Mitchell. Your bid was rejected. How dare you? Frank slammed both hands on the table, making the plates rattle. Some paper-pushing woman thinks she knows more than me. The numbers don't lie, Frank. Your bid was too high. Your company's financials weren't strong enough. Shut your mouth, he roared. His face turned purple with rage. Maybe if you spent less time controlling everyone and more time managing your business properly. The slap echoed through the dining room. My cheek burned. Susan gasped. Jenny began to cry. Lena, Ben finally spoke, his voice trembling. Apologize to Dad. Right now. I touched my stinging face, staring at him in disbelief. Apologize? You disrespected him in his own house. Frank smirked, victorious. Listen to my son. Know your place. That was the moment everything became crystal clear. This wasn't about business or family, it was about power. I stood slowly, my chair scraping back against the floor. Your son. You and your puppet. Get out of my house, Frank roared. Gladly. I turned to Ben. Are you coming? He looked between us, lost and trapped. Dad's right, he whispered. You went too far. I nodded slowly. Yeah, I did. I went too far thinking you'd ever be strong enough to stand up to him. As I walked out, I heard Frank's triumphant laugh. Women these days think they know everything. But he had made one crucial mistake. He thought this was over. It wasn't, not even close. Monday morning, I walked into my office with purpose. As head of construction financing, I had access to every major project bid in the area, including Frank's. A pattern quickly emerged: inflated bids, poor financial planning, a business running on reputation rather than results. 3 failed projects in 6 months, complaints about missed deadlines, workers quitting over Frank's temper. The rejection of the mall contract had hit him hard. A colleague mentioned his company was counting on it, using it as collateral for other loans. Everything clicked. Frank wasn't just a bully, he was a desperate one. The annual industry dinner couldn't have come at a better time. Everyone who mattered would be there. Contractors, developers, bankers. I made sure to sit with Mitchell Construction's CEO. Frank's quite traditional in his business approach, I said loudly enough to carry. Some might say, outdated. Right on cue, Frank appeared at our table, his face already red. Lena, he thundered. What are you doing discussing business? Frank sneered as he approached the table. I smiled sweetly. Oh, just talking about those numbers you think women can't possibly understand. You have no right. Like you had no right to lie about winning the mall contract. My voice carried across the room. Conversations halted and heads turned. Frank's face darkened. I built this industry, he thundered, his voice rising. Before your generation came in with your fancy degrees and progressive ideas. Is that why you lost the mall contract? I asked, tilting my head. Too many fancy degrees involved, or was it the financial irregularities in your bid? Frank's composure cracked. You little. He stepped toward me, hand raised, just like he had at dinner. I didn't flinch. Going to slap me here too? I asked, my voice loud and steady. In front of all your business associates, just like you did at Sunday dinner. He froze. The room was silent, the weight of my words hanging in the air. Mitchell Construction's CEO stood, his expression sharp. What's that about slapping? Frank's mask slipped completely. She's lying. Women always lie. Just like when they said my bid numbers didn't add up. The room stirred. More people stood, more questions followed. Each answer made Frank angrier, his true nature unraveling for all to see. This is family business, he roared, desperate to regain control. Family? I repeated calmly. Like how you control Ben's career, or how Susan's too afraid to speak, or how you forced Jenny to quit college. Frank sputtered, but it was too late. His own words had condemned him. Every misogynistic rant, every threat, every failed project spilled out in front of the entire industry. By the end of the week, 3 developers canceled contracts with Frank's company. 4 more followed shortly after. No one wanted to work with a man who couldn't control his temper or his business. 3 weeks later, Ben called. His voice was heavy with regret. Dad's drinking. Mom moved in with her sister. The business is failing. And us? I asked, though I already knew the answer. There was silence on the line. Then, I'm sorry. I should have protected you that night, but I didn't. I chose him, like I always did. Some choices you can't take back, Ben. I know, he said, his voice breaking. I've started therapy. Turns out a lot of us needed help dealing with Dad. But I understand if it's too late for us. It was. I had already contacted a divorce lawyer. The papers arrived a week later. Frank made one last attempt at control, storming into my office unannounced. Fix this, he demanded. Fix what? I asked calmly. Your reputation, your business, your broken family. I leaned back in my chair. No, Frank, you destroy everything. His face twisted with anger. You. No, Frank, you did that yourself, one slap at a time. The fallout was inevitable. Frank's company went under within months. He lives alone now, in a small apartment, still ranting about how women ruin the business world. Susan filed for divorce. Jenny went back to college, finally chasing her dreams. Ben moved across the country, determined to start fresh, far from his father's shadow. The divorce was finalized quietly. Ben sent one last email. You were right all along. I was never strong enough to stand up to him. I hope someday I can be as brave as you. As for me, I just got promoted to senior executive. My new office overlooks the mall project, the one that started it all. Mitchell Construction is doing a fantastic job with it. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying someone. It's about standing back and letting them destroy themselves. Frank did that perfectly. All I had to do was ensure everyone was watching when he did. My place was exactly where I belonged all along, standing up for myself, even if it meant standing alone. Hi, I'm Sandra. You know the saying, when you marry someone, you marry their whole family? Let me tell you about the nightmare that came with my otherwise perfect marriage. James and I had dated for 2 blissful years before tying the knot in a gorgeous spring ceremony. It was straight out of a fairy tale until my mother-in-law, Diana, decided I wasn't the princess her story needed. Oh, sweetie, that's somehow we fold napkins in this family, Diana said during my first family dinner as a newlywed, her perfectly manicured hands snatching the fabric from mine. James has always loved them folded into swans, haven't you, darling? James gave a weak smile. Mom's really particular about these things. That should have been my first red flag. But I was so desperate to be the perfect daughter-in-law that I spent 3 hours that night watching YouTube tutorials on napkin folding. Ridiculous, right? The little comments kept piling up. James looks a bit thin. Are you cooking enough protein? We always spend summers at the lake house. Sandra, I'm sure you can take time off work, can't you, dear? Each one was delivered with a saccharine smile that never quite reached her eyes. I tried everything to win Diana's approval. I brought her favorite wines, remembered every birthday and anniversary, asked for her recipes, and embraced her family traditions. But no matter how hard I tried, I always seemed to fall short of her impossible standards. Then came Thanksgiving, the breaking point. What do you mean we're going to your mom's for Thanksgiving? I asked James, confused. I thought we were having dinner at your parents' place. Diana's been talking about it for weeks. Mom says she told you, he replied casually. She had to cut the guest list because Aunt Martha's bringing her boyfriend's whole family. She figured you'd understand since you're not really into traditional family stuff anyway. My heart sank. James, she never told me. This is the first I'm hearing about it. Come on, Sandra. Mom wouldn't lie about that. You probably just forgot. You've been so busy with work lately. That's when it hit me. Diana hadn't forgotten to invite me. She deliberately excluded me and twisted the story to make me look like the problem. Your mother is lying, James. She's been doing this since day one. His voice turned cold. Don't start this again. Mom's been nothing but welcoming to you. You're the one always looking for problems where there aren't any. I went to bed alone that night, listening to James call his mother to apologize for my attitude. As I lay there, something shifted inside me. Diana wanted to play games. Fine. But she was about to learn that this daughter-in-law wasn't going to roll over and take it anymore. After Thanksgiving, the tension escalated into psychological warfare. Diana brought in reinforcements, her best friend, Karen, who suddenly appeared at every family gathering. I catch them whispering, their conversation halting the second I entered the room. I just don't know what to do anymore. I overheard Diana lamenting to Karen at a barbecue. She's so controlling. Poor James can barely spend time with his family without her making a scene. Have you noticed how she always has to be the center of attention? Karen chimed in just loud enough for others to hear. And that dress she wore to church last month? Completely inappropriate. For the record, I hadn't even been to church last month. I was stuck at home with the flu, but none of that mattered in Diana's carefully crafted narrative. The rumors spread like wildfire. Family members who used to greet me warmly now gave me strange, suspicious looks. Weekend brunches turned into minefields of passive-aggressive comments and subtle exclusions. Then, something unexpected happened. Sarah, James's sister, cornered me in the kitchen during a family dinner. "I see what she's doing to you," she said, her voice low but resolute. "Mom pulled the same stuff with my college boyfriends, the ones she didn't approve of." "You believe me?" I asked, almost afraid to hope. "Hard not to when you're watching history repeat itself," she said with a grim smile. "Michael and I only survived because he stood up to her early on." For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. Finally, someone else saw the truth. But Diana wasn't done. A week before Christmas, she dropped her biggest bomb yet. "I'm hosting a special family-only Christmas dinner this year," she announced at Sunday dinner. "Just parents and children. A return to tradition." "Mom, Sandra is family," James said, surprising everyone, including me. "Oh honey, of course she is," Diana replied, her tone syrupy. "But I meant blood family. You understand, don't you, Sandra?" Before I could respond, Sarah cut in. "Actually, Mom, Michael and I won't be able to make it either then, since he's not blood family." The room went dead silent. Diana's perfect mask slipped for just a moment, revealing the anger underneath. "Sarah, that's different. Michael and I have a special relationship." "Really? Because I remember you trying to exclude him our first 2 Christmases together." James's gaze flickered between his sister and mother, confusion etched on his face. "You did the same thing with Aunt Linda's husband," he said slowly, before Uncle Rick put his foot down. "That was completely different." Diana's voice rose slightly. "I don't understand why everyone's attacking me when all I'm doing is trying to preserve our family traditions." But the damage was done. For the first time, James didn't immediately jump to his mother's defense when I later brought up my concerns. "I always thought Sarah was exaggerating about how Mom treated Michael at first," he said quietly. Maybe I've been missing some things. It wasn't a full awakening, but it was a crack in Diana's perfect facade, and I intended to make that crack grow." Looking back, that was the night everything truly began to change. Diana had overplayed her hand, though she didn't realize it yet. Sarah and I became cover operators in our own family drama. She forwarded me screenshots of family group chats I'd mysteriously been left out of, while I kept a meticulous log of every interaction, every forgotten invitation, every backhanded comment. One afternoon, Michael showed us his phone. He'd accidentally been included in a group text meant for Karen. "Diana's literally orchestrating who sits where at family dinners to isolate you," he said, scrolling through the messages. "She's got diagrams and everything." "I can't believe she's put this much effort into making my life miserable," I muttered. "Oh, it gets better," Sarah said with a smirk. "Remember Linda's husband, Tom? He reached out after Christmas. Apparently, Diana pulled the same stunts with him until Rick threatened to cut her off from the grandkids." The evidence kept piling up. Robert, Diana's usually silent husband, overheard her plotting with Karen in their home office. "We need to push harder," Diana said. "James is still too attached. If we can just get him to see how she's changing him." "Maybe another family emergency when she's planned something important," Karen suggested. Robert, finally fed up, recorded the entire conversation. The dam broke as people began comparing notes. Years of Diana's manipulation came to light. Cousin Donna's husband had been excluded from family photos. Uncle Steve's wife had never been invited to girls' shopping trips. The pattern went back decades. But Diana wasn't going down without a fight. Sarah's baby shower became ground zero. I was hanging decorations when Diana burst in with Karen at her heels. "I know what you're doing," she hissed at me, "turning my own family against me, poisoning my son's mind." "Mom, stop it," Sarah tried to intervene. "And you?" Diana rounded on her daughter. "Siding with her over your own mother? After everything I've done for this family? Everything you've done?" Robert's voice came from the doorway. He'd arrived early with Michael. You mean like deliberately excluding our children's spouses, manipulating our son, making our daughter-in-law feel unwelcome in her own family? You don't understand. Diana's voice grew shrill. I'm protecting our family. She's trying to take my son away. No, Mom. James stepped out from behind his father. He'd heard everything. You're the one pushing me away. And I've got proof. The color drained from Diana's face as James held up his phone, showing the group chat screenshots Michael had uncovered. I wanted to believe you, James said quietly, his voice trembling. But Sarah was right, James said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. You did this to her and Michael. You've done it to everyone who married into our family. And worst of all, I let you do it to my wife. Diana's eyes darted around the room, seeking an ally, but all she saw were unsympathetic faces. Even Karen, her most loyal accomplice, took a step back, unwilling to be caught in the fallout. This isn't over, Diana snapped, grabbing her purse. This is my family, mine. She stormed out, leaving the baby shower in chaos. As the door slammed behind her, I caught Robert's eye. He gave me a subtle nod of reassurance. The final confrontation was coming, and this time we were ready. The annual family reunion became the stage for our ultimate act. Diana, oblivious to what was about to unfold, arrived with her usual air of control, her carefully crafted facade intact. She had no idea her world was about to collapse. Robert had insisted on hosting at their house this year, despite Diana's protests. When everyone was seated for lunch, he stood up, commanding the room's attention. Before we start, he began, his voice firm, we need to address something as a family. Diana's eyes darted nervously between Robert and Karen, who was suddenly very interested in her phone. For years, I've watched you manipulate and hurt people in this family, Robert continued, his tone steady but heavy with emotion. I stayed quiet, hoping you'd change, but after what happened at Sarah's baby shower. Robert, this isn't the time, Diana interjected, her voice tight with panic. Actually, Mom, James said, stepping forward, it's exactly the time. He pulled out a tablet and began scrolling. Let's start with the group text where you plan to exclude my wife from family events. Then we'll move on to the recordings of you and Karen plotting to break up my marriage. Karen shot to her feet. I never meet. Sit down, Sarah cut in, her voice icy. We have your messages too. All of them. The evidence unfolded like a tidal wave. Screenshots, recordings, testimonies from family members spanning decades. Diana's face grew paler with each revelation. You've been coordinating with Karen to spread lies about every person who married into this family, Michael said, holding up a series of message threads. But you got sloppy. You accidentally included me in some of your group texts. Diana's calm cracked, and she exploded. I did it for the family, she yelled. These outsiders come in, trying to change our traditions, taking my children away. No, Mom, James interrupted sharply. You did it for control, and you're not going to have that anymore. Diana's face crumpled as she looked around the room, finding no support. She ran from the room in tears, but there was no sympathy in the faces she left behind. Too many people had been hurt for too long. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about building something better from the ashes of what was destroyed. And that's exactly what we did. Diana's grip on the family was broken, and in its place, we created a new kind of bond. One built on honesty, mutual respect, and love. What would you do if your mother-in-law had spent years secretly sabotaging your marriage while pretending to be the perfect family matriarch? Would you expose her to the entire family like Sandra did, or would you handle it differently? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever experienced a situation where an in-law tried to manipulate family members against you? How did you handle it? If you enjoyed Sandra's journey from silently suffering to finally standing up for herself, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. The house was too quiet. That was the first thing I noticed when I walked in that evening, my arms full of grocery bags. Normally, my 5-year-old twins, Ethan and Emma, would be running around, laughing, arguing over toys. But tonight there was nothing, just silence. Melissa, my sister-in-law, was supposed to be babysitting. She had been our go-to for months, always eager to help. Too eager, I would later realize. Melissa? I called out, setting the bags on the counter. No answer. I walked through the living room, my heart starting to race. The toys were neatly arranged, too neat. Something felt wrong. The hallway to the kids' room felt longer than usual. With each step, my stomach twisted tighter. Their bedroom door was shut all the way. Melissa never did that. She always left it slightly open because they were afraid of the dark. I pushed it open. Empty. The beds were perfectly made, every toy in its place. No signs of my children. Ethan. Emma. My voice trembled. I checked the bathroom, the closet, the guest room. Nothing. No kids, no Melissa. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Melissa. We needed some air. Be back soon. The message was 3 hours old. I called my husband Mark, who was away on business. No answer. My panic turned into something worse, a suffocating fear. I called everyone I could think of, neighbors, police, friends. 2 hours and 17 frantic calls later, another text came. They're fine. Don't overreact. Fine. The most dangerous word I had ever read. The police said they couldn't do much. She's family, they told me. These things can be complicated. Complicated. Another meaningless word when your children are missing. Mark caught the first flight home. His mother arrived soon after, her face tight with worry, and something else I couldn't quite place. Melissa wouldn't do anything bad, she kept saying. She loves them. Love. A word that was starting to lose all meaning. 3 days passed. No real leads. Just Melissa's vague messages insisting the kids were safe. Then, a call. Emma's best friend's mother. My daughter said something strange, she told me. A conversation overheard. A child's innocent words. Aunt Melissa said we're going on a special adventure that Mommy and Daddy wouldn't understand. Adventure. A word that now filled me with dread. The police started digging. Credit card records, phone calls, social media. A picture began to form. Melissa hadn't just taken them on impulse. This was planned. Not for days, not for weeks. For months. What I didn't know then, what I was about to learn, was that this wasn't just a kidnapping. It was part of something much bigger. A secret I never could have imagined. And Melissa was just getting started. The investigation moved like a slow-burning fire, revealing embers of truth that threatened to consume everything. Detective Sarah Morgan sat across from me in our living room, her notepad open, eyes sharp with a mixture of professional detachment and genuine concern. Tell me about Melissa, she said, from the beginning. I took a deep breath. Melissa wasn't just my sister-in-law. She was Mark's younger sister, 10 years his junior, always desperate to prove herself. A woman who had never quite found her place in the world. She moved back to town 2 years ago, I began. Jobless, recently divorced. My husband felt obligated to help her. She practically begged to babysit the twins. At first, Melissa seemed perfect. Always available, never complained. Brought homemade cookies, sent cute photos of the kids during her babysitting shifts. How often did she babysit? Detective Morgan asked. At least twice a week, sometimes more. Mark thought it was helping her feel useful. The detective's pen moved silently across the page. Mark's mother called again. Her voice trembled. She's always been different, she said cryptically. Even as a child. Different. Another loaded word. A breakthrough came unexpectedly. Emma's school friend's mother had overheard something. A casual conversation between children revealed a crucial detail. Aunt Melissa said we're going somewhere special. That Mommy and Daddy won't understand. The police traced Melissa's recent purchases. A used SUV, camping gear, multiple prepaid cell phones, cash withdrawals. This wasn't a spontaneous act. This was meticulously planned. Credit card records showed something else. Multiple visits to child psychology websites, forums about custody, discussion boards for people feeling misunderstood by family systems. She's been planning this, Detective Morgan said, spreading documents across our coffee table. For months, possibly years. Mark sat silently, his face a mask of controlled rage and profound hurt. His sister, his own blood. Another call came from a campground owner in a remote mountain region. A woman with 2 children checked in last week, he said. Paid cash, used a fake name. The description matched Melissa perfectly. But why? What could possibly motivate a sister to take her own niece and nephew? As night fell, the house felt like a tomb. Silent. Waiting. Mark's mother arrived, her usual composure shattered. "There's something you need to know," she said, her voice barely a whisper. She revealed a family secret buried for decades, a story of childhood trauma, of a sister who was always different. Melissa had been diagnosed with a complex psychological condition as a teenager, attachment disorder, a profound inability to understand normal family dynamics. She always wanted children, Mark's mother said, but could never have her own. The pieces started forming a terrifying picture. Melissa didn't just take the children. In her mind, she believed she was saving them, rescuing them from a life she deemed inadequate. A psychological evaluation from her past surfaced. Recommendations for long-term therapy, warnings about her potential behavior, warnings everyone had ignored. Detective Morgan outlined the next steps: a multi-state search, national alerts, every resource mobilized. "We'll find them," she promised. But her eyes told a different story. The uncertainty, the fear. As midnight approached, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "They're safe. Better than ever. You'll understand soon." The game was about to change, and nothing would ever be the same. The mountain cabin stood isolated, surrounded by dense pine forests that seemed to swallow sound itself. Local authorities had tracked the location, but something felt off from the moment they approached. Detective Morgan briefed us before the planned operation. "We need to be careful," she warned. "Melissa's psychological profile suggests she might become volatile if cornered." Mark gripped my hand so tightly I could feel his pulse racing. 2 weeks had passed since Ethan and Emma disappeared. 2 weeks of hell, of uncertainty, of every parent's worst nightmare. The plan was precise. Local law enforcement would approach from multiple directions. A tactical team stood ready. The goal: rescue the children safely. As dawn broke, the operation began. Aerial surveillance showed movement inside the cabin: 2 small figures, an adult. The thermal imaging was clear enough to confirm the children were alive. "We're going in," the lead officer radioed. What happened next would become a story whispered in local law enforcement circles for years to come. The cabin wasn't just a hiding place. It was a carefully constructed world. When they breached the door, they found something unexpected. The children were not just safe, they were thriving. Melissa had created an elaborate homeschooling environment. Educational materials lined the walls. The twins' beds were meticulously made, nutritious meals prepared, their clothing clean and organized. But it was their reaction that shocked everyone. Ethan and Emma didn't cry, didn't show fear. Instead, they looked confused by the commotion. "Are we going home?" Emma asked, her voice calm, too calm. Psychological evaluations would later reveal the depth of Melissa's manipulation. She hadn't just taken the children. She'd systematically worked to make them believe their parents didn't want them. Hours of interrogation followed. Melissa remained eerily composed. "I was protecting them," she repeated, "from a life of mediocrity, from parents who didn't understand their potential." The legal process was complex. Psychological evaluations, family court hearings, each layer revealed more about Melissa's intricate plan. She had documentation, fabricated evidence suggesting we were unfit parents, carefully crafted narratives designed to justify her actions. Mark's mother broke down during her testimony. "She was always different," she repeated, "always trying to prove something." The children underwent extensive psychological evaluations. Counselors worked carefully to understand the trauma, to help them process their experience. Slowly, carefully, Ethan and Emma began to reconnect, to understand. The first night home was surreal. They were physically present, but emotionally distant. Years of careful manipulation couldn't be undone overnight. "We're going to get through this," Mark whispered to me, holding me as I cried. Months of therapy followed. Family counseling, individual sessions, a delicate process of rebuilding trust. Melissa was charged with kidnapping, but the legal system recognized the complexity of her psychological condition. She would receive treatment, not just punishment. A year later, things began to stabilize. Ethan started Little League. Emma joined a dance class. Small victories that felt like miracles. The day of Melissa's sentencing arrived. Mark chose to speak. "She's my sister," he said, his voice breaking. But what she did was unforgivable. The judge sentenced her to a specialized psychiatric facility. Treatment, rehabilitation, a chance to understand the depth of her actions. As we left the courthouse, Emma tugged at my hand. "Can we get ice cream?" she asked. Such a simple question, such a normal moment. And in that moment, I realized we had survived. Not just survived, we had won. The nightmare was over. But the healing was just beginning. The moral of the story is that love, even when well-intended, can be dangerous when twisted by delusion and unresolved trauma. It highlights the importance of recognizing mental health struggles, addressing them before they escalate, and understanding that even family members can cause harm when their actions stem from a distorted sense of righteousness. It also speaks to the resilience of family, the power of truth, and the long but possible journey of healing. While the scars of manipulation and loss don't fade overnight, love, patience, and support can rebuild what was broken.